I am writing this in my mother's name because her English isn't very good. The incident happened in the year 2005. My mother was 62 years old at that time and I was 26. I am her daughter. We were sitting in the living room. My mother stood up and walked to the closet to get something off the highest shelf. She got on top of an unstable stool to stand on. While reaching for the top shelf, she lost her balance, fell from the stool and banged her head on the hard floor. My uncle and I immediately rushed to help my mom. She was lying on the floor with her eyes closed. After maybe half a minute, she opened her eyes. She had a very confused look and her eyes were glazed over. She wasn't herself, but was just a moving body, not really present inside her body. We helped her to walk to the sofa, and I was sitting next to her on the chair the whole time until she was back to her normal self. The next day, she told me that when she fell off the stool, she suddenly found herself in an unknown and different place. She was sitting in a vehicle that was driving or moving forward on a road. Next to her, on her left-hand side, she knew someone was sitting and driving her. But for some reason, she couldn't move her head to the left. She could only look to her right and to the front. The vehicle had no roof. She was sitting in a chair. I asked my mom if the vehicle looked like a car, but my mother wasn't sure. It was just something that looked like a car, but was floating or gliding over the road. Next to the road there was a pavement with people walking in slow pace. A bit further she saw green grass, trees, and in the distance beautiful detached houses. The road the vehicle was moving on had high trees on both sides. The people who walked on the pavement looked all very happy. Some of them waved to me mom and smiled. She saw her deceased husband, who was me stepfather. He bent forward towards the car, smiled and waved to her. He was there with Blondie, our golden retriever dog, who died a long time ago. My mom also saw her old fiance from when she was young, who died in a car crash. She also saw a few other people who aren't alive any longer. There was also a woman who was an old friend of my mother, but they lost contact years ago. My mom was surprised to see her there because she thought the woman was still alive. But after this experience, my mom found out that the woman died a few years ago of cancer. The air had a sweet smell of daffodils. My mom turned to the person next to her and spoke in thoughts, not words. A bit further down the road, my deceased parents are waiting for me. At that moment, someone said, "Not yet." My mother woke up on the floor in the living room with me uncle and I helping to bring her to the sofa. This isn't the end of this experience, though. My mother said that while she was lying on the sofa, she was aware of the fact she was on the sofa, and I was sitting next to her in the chair asking the whole time if she's all right. She saw a man leaning against our coffee table. My mom said that she couldn't understand who the man was. She thought it was maybe a doctor, and she didn't understand where he came from because she was still a bit dizzy from the fall. I was sitting next to her, and I didn't see anyone. Apparently the man had shoulder-length, long wavy hair, and was wearing a long white dress with a rope around his waist. Mom said that he came closer to her, near her face, and looked at her with a very concerned and loving look in his big round brown eyes. Then he turned his head a bit to the side and said something along the lines of, "She's back," she returned. After that he stood there near the table for a short while and then raised from the floor in the corner of our living room and disappeared like in a fog. After lying on the sofa for an hour, my mother was fine and back to her old self. I think it's great she had an experience like this. We both think that the man in the living room must have been her guardian angel or someone who is looking after her during this life. Maybe it was the same person who was driving her in the vehicle before. My mother has told this story to many people, and most of them were very interested to hear about it. Thanks for reading. Be kind to each other and appreciate the people who love you. Life is very short.